Hello everyone, and today we're going to be continuing our series on The Dark Knight Returns with issue 3, Hunt the Dark Knight. Sorry I've been gone for so long. I took a bit of a break in order to figure out my life in general, where I'm going in the future, and if you want more details on that, you can watch my video from last week. But now I'm back, and we're going to be continuing the series on what is easily my favorite graphic novel of all time. Also, I hope you like the slightly adjusted setup. I got a couch, so that's what I'm sitting in now. It's very comfy, thank you for asking. But before we get into the story today, we're gonna do a little bit of a recap from the last video. Well, from the whole series up until this point. In the last issue, Batman successfully dismantled the mutant gang by taking out their leader. The remaining mutants have splintered off into their own separate groups, including a large group of them forming a group called the Sons of the Batman, who are now a group of vigilantes who are enacting violent justice on Gotham's underworld. Their heart's in the right place, but they're going about it in the completely wrong way. Carrie Kelly has officially joined Batman as his new Robin and is undergoing her training. Commissioner Gordon has officially retired and been replaced by Commissioner Ellen Yindel, who is a very anti-Batman person. And so, in addition to having to contend with Gotham's underworld, Batman is also going to be facing off against the full might of the Gotham City Police Department. Superman, meanwhile, has been ordered by President Reagan to put Bruce back in retirement, whether by force or not. And the Joker has awoken from his 10-year coma and is planning his big return to Gotham City. Batman now has enemies on all sides, and this will all come to a head in this issue, Hunt the Dark Knight. If you couldn't tell who's hunting the Dark Knight, everybody. And before we get into the actual content of this issue specifically, I do want to provide another content warning going forward. This series contains very adult themes, very dark adult themes, and this issue in particular is very heavy on those themes. And without going into a lot of detail right now, a lot of the very, hardcore adult themes and stuff like that are all centered around the Joker, who plays a very big role in this specific issue. And this version of the Joker is easily the most disturbed portrayal of the character I've ever read, and also seen too. Now, there have been many adaptations of the Joker over the years. To point out some, Jack Nicholson's version of the Joker was more of a gangster. Heath Ledger was an anarchist and a domestic terrorist. And Jared Leto was,
What do we have here by erasing my mind?
And Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal of the Joker was a very mentally ill loner with a society that abandons it and treats it like trash. But this version of the Joker in The Dark Knight Returns is dramatically different from any of those portrayals. This version of the Joker has much more in common with many real-world serial killers than he does to any of the Jokers I've just listed off. And his actions in this issue are very, very disturbing. So just be warned of that. Lots of killing and sexual violence, stuff like that. So if you're not comfortable with dealing with that today or ever, I would skip this one, honestly, for your own safety. And with all that said, let's get into the story. But first, a word from our sponsor. I'm on a mission to make content creation my job, and to do that, I need your help. In the description, there is a link to my Patreon where you can support me in exchange for benefits, as well as a link to my Twitch channel where you can support me through subscriptions and bits, as well as a PayPal if you're feeling generous. Thanks for listening to my speech, and we're gonna get back to the video. To begin with, Superman has officially arrived in Gotham City, and he is very frustrated with Batman. He believes that Batman's actions in returning and this rapid escalation that his return has created could endanger both his own life and the lives of all the former members of the Justice League who were allowed to live peacefully after their retirement. But never mind all that now, because a liquor store is being robbed. The robber's name is Bruno, and she is accompanied by 2 former members of the mutant gang. And no, I didn't misspeak and say she. Bruno is a woman. Not only that, but she's also a neo-Nazi. Bet you didn't see any of this coming. It would appear in the absence of the mutant leader, these particular mutants have substituted one form of tyranny for the other. Bruno is currently threatening the manager of the liquor store at gunpoint. And at that exact moment, a very old and hunched over woman emerges from one of the aisles of the store yelling about the outrageous price of liquor at this store. Grinning psychotically, one of the former mutants approaches the woman, pointing his gun at her. And in response to this, the old woman takes a bottle from her cart and smashes it into the man's head with blinding speed. Bruno and the last remaining henchman immediately open fire on the woman, who charges right at them through the gunfire. She slides across the room, tackles the remaining henchman, and throws him across the store into a display of liquor. Bruno, understandably, flees the scene. The store manager, now in possession of the henchman's gun, is holding the henchman at gunpoint, threatening his life, to which, as the old woman exits the store to run after Bruno, the woman turns and in a very deep voice says, "You pull that trigger, and I'll be back for you." Running out of the store, the old woman calls Robin to let her know that Bruno is on her way towards Robin's location, and to lure her into an alleyway without being seen. If it wasn't obvious at this point, the old woman is Batman. That's what I love about Batman in this story that I haven't seen in any other version of the character, is that he's a master of disguise. Like, he just blends right in with the populace. It's really crazy. Meanwhile, President Ronald Reagan is holding a press conference. And of course, the question on every reporter's mind in that room is his response to the Batman controversy. Reagan simply deflects responsibility to the state governor. The state governor deflects responsibility to the mayor of Gotham City, and the new mayor of Gotham City, of course, deflects his answer onto the new commissioner, Yindel. Politics, am I right? Bruno is now on the run. Robin manages to get Bruno's attention and to lure her into the alleyway, however, she is spotted. Bruno opens fire, but Robin quickly evades and goes quiet. Thinking that Robin must have gone through the door in the alleyway, she bursts through the door into a very dark room. And in the darkness of this room, she hears Batman's voice. "If you're lucky, Bruno, you'll go to jail tonight. But first you'll tell me what your boss has planned on his TV appearance." So now we know that Bruno is working for somebody, and that somebody is planning a big appearance on television. And now the question on everybody's mind is, who in their right mind in Gotham City would hire a neo-Nazi to do any sort of work that could be traced back to them? Bruno falls through the floor of this old building and into the basement. Batman leaps in the hole after her, but he's too slow, and she manages to open fire on him. "Thank goodness, though, she misses," Batman remarks, as he claims this would have been a very stupid death. For a man who's faced enemy fire as long as he has, it would be very stupid to go out this way. Something I haven't really mentioned too much throughout my coverage of this series is that this whole time that he's been back as Batman, he's been searching for a good death. By that, I mean, like, the figure of the Batman at this point is very large and very mythic. He has a very high standard to live up to, and he is just searching for the one thing, the one challenge, or the one person that he would feel could take him out. At least should take him out. He doesn't want to go out chasing some mugger on the street. He wants to die a good soldier's death, facing massive evil. And I believe that he returned not only just to fight the good fight like he used to, but also he returned to the fold in the search of this good death. He wants to go out the same way that Jason did. Batman jumps into the basement, slamming Bruno back into the ground. We then cut to an incident that is occurring at the subway, not the restaurant, the train. An advertising agent is being interviewed on the news, and spoiler alert, he's a horrible person, and I don't like him. He's talking to reporters, regaling them with this tale of woe of how he was harassed in public at the subway by this beggar. And we cut to the actual incident that he's talking about, and we find out that the beggar in question was just a crippled person who probably got just slightly too close to his personal space, and his response was to shove them off of the subway platform and onto the tracks. Can you see why I love this guy? Gotta love Gotham citizens, man. We cut back to the interview where he is like spitting this tale of him being the victim and how this person was obviously faking an injury just to get close to him so he could rob him, which...
For legal reasons, no. For anecdotal reasons, sure.
The man on the tracks begins screaming and begging this agent, this terrible person, to jump down onto the tracks and save him, because he can't get up himself, and the subway lights are appearing at the end of the tunnel. Instead, the man begins running away, probably not wanting to be arrested for murder, which that was. And as he's doing this, something hits him in the chest very hard, sending him flying backwards. It really speaks to how terrible this guy is, because in the report, he keeps playing the victim and like complaining about how severe his chest pain is from that impact. He also keeps ragging on the man he pushed in front of the subway, saying that he was screaming and praying like an idiot. Like, damn, man. After whatever that impact was knocked him backwards, you hear the violent sounds of metal groaning, and we cut back to see that the subway was stopped right before it could hit the man. The front of the subway itself was crumpled inwards like a tin can. Did they still make cans out of tin? Aluminum can. Aluminium can. I'll spoil the magic for you. That was Superman. He dipped into the scene with blinding speed so that he wouldn't be seen, stopped the subway before it could hit that guy, and then just flew by on his merry way. I know I'm underplaying the fact that Superman just saved someone, but like, that's the Superman way. Since his continued operation and existence is highly classified, he moves with blinding speed so that no one actually sees him doing it. Meanwhile, Batman is beating up Bruno. He's trying to interrogate some information out of her. This whole operation was specifically set up by him and Robin so he could interrogate Bruno for this information. As he's fighting her, he starts to feel the floor rumble underneath him, and he becomes a little bit fearful because in the back of his mind, he knows exactly what that means. And more importantly, he knows that it will ruin his plan. A blue blur smashes through the brick wall beside them, sending both Bruno and Batman flying. Bruno begins shooting at this new assailant, but Batman knows that it won't do any good. Faster than she can react, the gun in her hand reaches a boiling point as if superheated by an invisible heat ray. With blinding speed, something twists the metal pipes of the walls all around her, tying her up as if with ropes. And it is then that Batman hears the very familiar voice of Clark Kent. "Bruce, we have to talk. I'm busy tonight. You've just cost me hours. Tomorrow morning, my place. Stay out of my way until then." Having now exchanged his old woman costume for his actual Batman costume, he meets Robin up on the roof of that building. He chastises Robin for allowing Bruno to see her. There is no room for error in Batman's kinds of operations, and so if she slips up again like that, she will be fired. It comes across as very harsh, but with a life as intense as Batman lives, everything has to go precisely according to plan or else people die. So I think it's justified. Having lost Bruno as a lead, the two now have to follow up with the only other lead that Batman has as to this unknown adversary's plans, and that is a man named Abner. Meanwhile, we cut to the televised inauguration of Gotham City's new police commissioner, Ellen Yindel. Gordon steps up to the podium in order to give a speech. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce you to your new police commissioner. I do not envy her the next few years. This job has few rewards. Best you can hope for is that when you're finished with it, things aren't as lousy as they would have been without you. Ellen Yindel is eminently qualified for the job. To attempt to quote her outstanding record in the minutes I'm allowed would be a disservice to her. Rather, I offer my sympathy in the knowledge of what she faces. She faces a city of thieves and murderers and honest people too frightened to hope. She faces life and death decisions every hour to come. Some will torture her. She will face a man who is the living spirit of something we need. She may be his enemy. She may learn from him. I wish her well. Thank you, and goodbye. Ellen then takes the stage, expresses her gratitude to her mentor, Commissioner Gordon, and issues an arrest warrant for the Batman. The charges are breaking and entering, assault and battery, and creating a public menace. Meanwhile, Batman and Robin are outside of Abner's house and are casing the place. The lights are out, so it doesn't look like anybody's home, and Batman emphasizes that they need to be quiet and they need to be patient in order to observe Abner when he does return. Carrie gets impatient and jumps into the building, determined to find clues. Batman yells after her to stop, but it's too late. When she enters, all she sees is a dark room. Illuminated by the moonlight is a solitary female doll. The face of the doll is very misshapen and hideous. Robin approaches the doll, making a disgusted noise, to which the doll swears at her. The doll can talk. The doll's also a bomb, by the way. Batman grabs a confused Robin, knowing exactly what's about to happen, and he pulls her out of the building just in time for the entire top of an apartment complex to explode. I'll send Robin home. I'll help the emergency teams as best I can. I'll count the dead, one by one. I'll add them to the list, Joker. The list of all the people that I've murdered by letting you live. As we now know, Bruno was trying to interrogate Bruno and Abner for information on their boss, the Joker. I do find it interesting that Joker would employ Bruno even though she's a neo-Nazi, because it is actually, fun fact, it is canon to DC lore that Joker hates Nazis, which at least there's one redeeming quality. And we also see at least a fraction of the level of hate that this Batman holds for his Joker. It seems that his biggest regret of his entire career as Batman is that he hasn't killed the Joker sooner. Speak of the devil, the Joker is currently laying in his bed in Arkham Asylum. He is about to make an appearance on the David Endocrine Show, which is a very popular talk show in Gotham City. And he's so excited that he can't sleep, even though he knows he should. And on the news, we find out that 12 people were killed in the explosion at Abner's apartment, and that Batman was sighted at the scene. Commissioner Ellen Yindel has filed an official protest regarding the Joker's appearance on the David Endocrine Show, but that appeal was denied. Meanwhile, Soviet presence in Corto Maltese is rapidly growing, but the president assures the public that they will not be the first to use nuclear force. Bet you forgot the Cold War was still happening. Technically, it's 2023 and it's kind of still happening. We cut to a field outside of Wayne Manor where Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent are meeting for the first time in years. Bruce at this point is now old and gray, but Clark hasn't aged a single day since the golden age of superheroes. a very fortunate side effect of his powers. Or unfortunate, there's a whole debate on whether immortality would be a good thing. While Clark does admit that Bruce looks better than he has in years now that he's officially returned as Batman, he expresses genuine concern for the pace at which he's going at his age. He doesn't want to tell Bruce the truth, and he doesn't want to say it, but Bruce responds to that saying, "Nobody can make you do what you don't want to, Clark." Which is kind of a spit in Clark's face, considering his situation, because that is exactly what the US government does with him. Despite Superman's love for humanity, he has to do whatever the US government tells him to do in order to preserve the safety of both himself and all the surviving members of the Justice League. And for the US government now, that means him killing Soviets. So it's kind of an insult to Clark because, as a matter of fact, people can tell him to do whatever they want. Knowing as much, Clark responds saying that the old days are gone. This new world doesn't really have a place for people like him or Bruce anymore. And things will just keep on escalating if he keeps going, to the point where someone higher up is going to tell Superman to do something about it, but not in his capacity as a friend. To which Bruce coldly responds, "When that does happen, may the best man win." Bruce is resolved to keep going on this path and let things keep on escalating, and when Superman eventually comes to deal with him, Batman will just deal with him in turn. Before he can respond, Clark says that he has to go. As we find out, it is because US troops have officially engaged Soviet forces in Corto Maltese, and Superman has to go and intervene. Meanwhile, Reagan is giving a very politically charged address to the public. It's very clear in the whole comic that Frank Miller was very against US foreign policy at the time, specifically, like all these proxy wars and sending US troops into other countries to kind of like force democracy on them. At least the US's idea of democracy. I'm not gonna get into politics because, truth be told, I hate politics, actually. Just the whole thing. All of it. But there are a lot of political messages that you can draw out of The Dark Knight Returns, absolutely. But I'm gonna get back to the superhero stuff, because now Superman is in Corto Maltese. As he is blowing up Soviet jets with his bare hands, he starts doing this thing that we're gonna see happen in both Superman and Batman's minds, where they kind of like air their grievances towards each other through internal monologue, sorry. This is one of the reasons that it feels more natural that these two forces are going to come to a head. In Batman v Superman, it kind of felt a little forced, but in this story, especially because of the world around them and the forces that each of them represent, it's kind of inevitable that the two are going to show down, and now he is airing his grievances towards Batman as he kills people even though he doesn't want to be. He says that the world around them was rapidly changing, and everyone else in the Justice League saw what was happening and decided to put down the sword and retire. But Bruce was always obsessive, and he refused to let go of this war that he started. He is the one big wrench that is kind of threatening Superman's way of life, and also his own way of life, Batman's own way of life. After this, we see a montage of many different sides preparing for the coming storm that is the Joker's appearance on live television. Abner, who we find out through seeing him, is the same guy that Two-Face approached in issue 1 about making bombs for him. The guy who was always loyal to the Joker even as he was sitting catatonic in Arkham. He tells the Joker that everything is prepared, and he reminds him to remember to wear his nose plugs. We're gonna find out why. Not now, though. Commissioner Yindel and a large team of GCPD SWAT, essentially, are outside the studio of the David Endocrine Show preparing to arrest both Batman and the Joker tonight. Bruce, in the meantime, is preparing all of his equipment for the night's activities, and he asks Alfred to go fetch Robin. Meanwhile, Joker is now in the studio of the show, and he is putting on his own very special lipstick. Dr. Wolper is with him as well. I haven't mentioned this. Him and Dr. Wolper, the very egotistical psychiatrist, are going on the show together. This is kind of Wolper's big moment of ego, where he can be like, you know, the god complex doctor that he is. Look how I've healed this insane person and how functional he is. As we're gonna find out, the story of Dr. Wolper and the story of Icarus are very similar. Batman and Robin are now in his helicopter, which is cloaked outside of the studio building. He tells Robin that this is a strictly observational mission for her. She is to stay in the copter and do not touch any of the controls. If anything should go wrong in this mission, all she has to do is save boosters, and the voice-activated computer will take her away from the scene without anybody knowing she was there. There are 8 GCPD choppers outside of the studio as well, so obviously his helicopter is cloaked. Joker and Dr. Wolper are about to take the stage, the world-famous psychiatrist and his greatest achievement ever. But of course, his ego is too big to see what's actually going on here. Wolper's ego. Joker knows what's going on here. Meanwhile, Abner deploys the doll of a boy that looks very similar to the one that blew up his apartment just yesterday. Batman dives out of his helicopter and begins free-falling towards the roof of the studio, where the GCPD are waiting for him. They blast him with a spotlight, and Ellen Yindel gets on a megaphone and starts yelling at Batman to surrender because he is under arrest. Batman simply looks on them with contempt and says, "These children don't know me." As he lands on the roof, he immediately deploys a wad of thermite, which takes out the floodlight that was on him, and follows that up immediately with a smoke bomb, and he begins getting to work. As the police open fire, Batman begins taking them all out one by one. It's been decades since he's had to contend with Gotham City Police Department, but he's really good at it. Joker officially now makes his entrance onto the stage with Dr. Wolper close behind him. So many faces, so different from one another, and so few smiles. That's the Joker talking. David, the host of the show, opens the interview by questioning Joker on how many people he's killed. The rumor is that Joker has killed up to 600 people. This is where I'm gonna go on a bit of a true crime tangent just to show how, bad that is. In the modern age, the serial killer with the largest confirmed amount of kills is Dr. Harold Shipman. I'm not going to get into the details of how he did it or his whole story. There's better people more qualified to talk about that. But in his career as a serial killer, he killed between 218 to 250 people. And he is one of the most prolific serial killers of the modern age. And his kill count is a third of what the Joker is potentially guilty of. There's also another serial killer from the Andes named Pedro Lopez. And to be clear, Pedro Lopez was awful, horrible person. Honestly, don't look him up. It's very sad. He does have an official number of kills that are attributed to him, but if his own word is to be believed, he could have possibly murdered up to 350 people, which is still just over half of what the Joker is rumored to have killed in this story. Now, obviously, I'm not belittling the serious damage that these serial killers have done, because obviously they existed in the real world and this Joker is fictional. I'm just using these statistics to kind of give you a baseline of how bad he is in the story. He simply responds to David's question by saying that he never kept count. Apparently, the many lives that he took in his time as the Joker meant nothing to him. He then follows that up by very casually saying that he is going to kill every single person in this room, in the studio tonight. Very fun, very lighthearted joke. Moving on. On the roof, the police are beginning to get the upper hand. Through sheer numbers alone, they are beginning to pile on top of Batman. Dr. Wolper, meanwhile, dismisses the joke about killing everyone in the room as an attempt to clear the ice. Break the ice, sorry. David then turns to ask Dr. Wolper a question. He was very adamant on the news that Batman was to blame for every single life that was taken by Batman's enemies, especially the Joker. To which Wolper reiterates that Joker is merely a victim of Batman's psychosis. He's the crazy one, not the Joker, definitely not. And the psychosis that Wolper accuses Batman of is sexual repression specifically, which I don't know how that exactly translates to dressing like a bat and beating up terrible people, but I'm also not a world famous psychiatrist, so tip of the hat to you. Expressing his loathing for sexual repression, the Joker turns around and kisses the woman guest who is immediately beside him, who was being interviewed before him. So yeah, he's that kind of person. As he pulls away, the woman goes manic. Her grin stretches impossibly wide into this huge, gaping grin. She goes pale, and then she goes silent, dead. That was the lipstick, by the way. That was the special lipstick that the Joker was applying. Does something to people that's very bad. Batman is still fighting for his life on the roof, but the police are piling on top of him. Robin, who has spent her entire time where she was supposed to be observing, completely reprogramming the computer of the helicopter, brings it in very close to the roof and decloaks. While the police are distracted, Batman grabs the landing gear of the helicopter and holds on for dear life as the helicopter pulls away. Meanwhile, the police outside hear that the Joker has killed someone, and they immediately rush the studio. However, before they can get there, the doll bomb that Abner deployed bursts through the window of the studio, the whole while it's spewing a toxic gas. The doll grabs the head of Dr. Wolper and twists violently, breaking his neck, killing the world-famous psychiatrist there in the studio. Meanwhile, Batman and Robin are retreating in order to regroup. Batman notices that Robin has completely reprogrammed the computer in his helicopter. When Carrie asks if she's fired, he smiles, looking very impressed, and says that no, she isn't fired. Meanwhile, the Joker in the studio is basking in the glory of his latest killing spree. Now, everyone in the audience has a permanent and disfigured smile, and all are dead. On the news, they give the alarming news that the Joker is loose, and 206 people are now dead. Meanwhile, Superman in Corto Maltese is still airing his grievances towards Batman. As he derails tanks of Soviet troops, he talks about how the world has grown much more fearful of people like him, and how the world will kill all superheroes if they find out that they're still living, and how the world must never be reminded that superheroes are still alive and still out there. Back in the studio, staring at the piles of body bags on the floor, Commissioner Yindel lights a cigarette after quitting smoking 5 years ago. She sends one of the rookies home who was there at the scene. The sight of all the carnage in front of him made him violently sick, so they let him go home. We then cut to an escort service that is run by Selina Kyle. It appears that after her time as Catwoman, she started a business providing very wealthy clients with company. Yeah, we're gonna say company. Much like Clark is, she is thinking about how Bruce shouldn't have come back. He is blind to how drastically the world has changed since the glory days, and he doesn't realize that the world will kill him if they have an opportunity. As she is standing there thinking this, the Joker steps in. Selina demands that he leave immediately, obviously, to which he, in response, insults her appearance, grabs her, and kisses her. Real psychopath behavior. This is how I imagine everyone on r/nice guys acts if they could ever be within the radius of a woman. Thankfully, he wasn't wearing his lipstick at the very least, so she doesn't die, which is great. He then expresses interest in a woman employed by Selena named Elsie, who has a date later tonight with a congressman. He then begins to apply a different kind of special lipstick. As we find out later, this lipstick is used to put Joker's victims under his control, which, bad. He plans to use this to drug Elsie, who can in turn drug the congressman that she is going to be meeting with. And in the news, we find out that the Sons of Batman apprehended a shoplifter who was attempting to steal magazines.
They cut his hands off.
This vigilante group is far too extreme in their methods, and the news will constantly use them to vilify Batman over and over again, saying that he supports their actions, even though he never does. We then cut to the rendezvous between Elsie and said congressman. Elsie is fully under the Joker's spell and is also wearing the lipstick in order to drug the congressman in turn. And after kissing the self-proclaimed happily married congressman, she asks him for a favor. The next time we see this congressman, he is on the ledge of his hotel building wearing nothing but the American flag and is calling for a full nuclear strike on Cordo Maltese. Batman and Robin arrive on the scene, but they cannot stop what happens next. I should probably mention, like most of the buildings in Gotham City, this hotel is a skyscraper, so he's like hundreds of feet in the air as he's doing this whole stunt. A cop bursts through the window trying to grab the congressman off the ledge, but he slips and falls all hundreds of feet to the ground and obviously dies instantly. Captain O'Halloran of the 6th Gotham Precinct approaches Captain Yindel asking if there's anything he can do. She says that the congressman was with an escort from Kyle Escorts and that she was drugged. She tells him to go to Kyle Escorts, shut down the operation, and pick up Selena. O'Halloran leaves to go follow orders, and O'Halloran shows up to ask Yindel what he can do to help. Yindel realizes her mistake and orders her officers to stop the first Captain O'Halloran, but he bursts through the guards with surprising strength and runs at full speed away from the scene. He leaps on his motorcycle and him and Robin take off. This was Batman, obviously, dressed as a police captain. It's crazy. I love his disguises in this show. Comic book. It's not a show. Meanwhile, Superman is continuing to massacre Soviet forces while venting about his anger towards Batman. You were the one they used against us, Bruce. The one who played it rough. When the noise started from the parents' groups and the subcommittee called us in for questioning, you were the one who laughed. That scary laugh of yours. Sure, we're criminals, you said. We've always been criminals. We have to be criminals. He blames Batman for the way that things turned out in the end. Because of his methods, the courts and the government systems were able to gain the upper hand. Batman and Robin arrive at Selena's apartment, knowing that Kyle Escorts is abandoned at this point. But the police are not too far behind, so they only have a small window. They find Selena in her bed. She is beaten, tied up, and dressed in a Wonder Woman costume. And all she can say when they remove the gag is that the Joker is worse than ever. It's never expressly said what the Joker did to her, but the implication is very bad. Very, very bad. Definitely one of the darkest portrayals of the Joker that I've seen in anything, including the one where he cuts his face off and staples it on his face upside down. That somehow seems better, actually. She tells Bruce everything about the mind control lipstick and Elsie with the congressman, and she also says that another one of her women is meeting with the governor tonight and was also given lipstick by the Joker. And on the floor, Robin notices a tuft of cotton candy. This is a clue from the Joker. His next target is the county fair. I should also mention at this point, ever since the incident with the congressman, Batman has been asking the same questions on a loop in his head. How many more? How many more people need to die? How many more people need to be killed by the Joker before he does what he knows he should do? Selina begs Batman not to take Kelly with him, and from the way that she talks and how she trails off afterwards, it definitely implies certain things about what the Joker did. Bruce and Selina kiss, and then he tells Robin to go fetch the wing, which, as we'll find out, is a Batman-themed glider. There's not much of a romance in the Dark Knight Returns, at least for Bruce, but certain things are implied in both issue 1 and this issue that show that Bruce and Selina at least have something going on. Not in a conventional sense, but they are sort of together. The police now burst into Selina's apartment. Batman throws thermite at their feet to distract them, and him and Robin jump through the window and grab onto the glider that Robin just called in. She got here faster than I planned. Reminds me of Jim in the old days. You tried to warn me, Jim. So many times. You told me that I break too many of the important rules, that I've made too many of the wrong enemies, that for all my tricks, I've been getting by on luck. It's all a game of odds, you said. All it will take is one bullet. The cops open fire on the glider as they try to escape. One of the bullets breaks Robin's harness, and she begins free-falling towards the ground below. Batman grabs her hand, but the glove that she's wearing slips off, and she begins to free fall. She manages to grab the very end of Batman's cape, and he pulls her back up to the glider. Terrified, the two embrace. It seems that their luck is quickly running out. Yindel gives the order that child endangerment be added to the list of Batman's crimes. And suddenly, Batman's voice comes over her radio. All he tells her is that the governor is in danger, and he doesn't have time to get to him. It's up to her. Yindel looks a bit resigned at this. She doesn't want to be taking orders from a vigilante that she's trying to arrest, but she also does need to save the governor. We cut back to Superman, who is still decimating Soviet forces while speaking to himself. We almost threw a party when you retired. By then the PBI was in it and things were getting out of hand. And there was that trouble with Oliver. Do you remember why you retired, Bruce? No. Just look at you. You'd do it again. And like a murderer, you'd cover it up again. Nothing matters to you except your holy war. They were considering their options, and you were probably still laughing when we came to terms. I gave them my obedience and my invisibility. They gave me a license and let us live. No, I don't like it, but I get to save lives, and the media stays quiet. But now the storm is growing again. They'll hunt us down again. Because of you. Which is not entirely wrong. Just because they're setting up a conflict between Batman and Superman doesn't mean that he's not right. I think they're both right in their own respects. Batman's return is an active threat, both towards himself and to others. He doesn't like what he has to do for the US government, but the alternative is all of them getting killed, so he does it. At the county fair, the Joker is handing out cotton candy to all the eager children at the fair. This is where it gets really heavy, so I wouldn't blame you if you left. I'm gonna read his words because they're terrifying. They could put me in a helicopter and fly me up into the air, and line the bodies head to toe on the ground in delightful geometric patterns, like an endless June Taylor dancer's routine. And it would never be enough. No, I don't keep count, but you do. And I love you for it. So, spoiler alert, the cotton candy's not good. Not good at all. On the news, the US is prepared to authorize nuclear force against Corto Maltese. Meanwhile, the police apprehend former members of the mutant gang who were attempting to poison the Gotham City water supply. Their faces are painted white and their hair is dyed green. We then cut back to the fair where we see the devastating impact of the Joker's cotton candy. as we see hundreds of children lying dead on the ground. I told you it gets bad. It gets real bad. Batman's here too, by the way. Somewhere, a woman calls out for her son. Somewhere, a Calliope plays the same tune again and again. A tiny hand tightens its grip on my arm. A girl of 13 breathes in sharply, her innocence lost. It ends tonight, Joker. Meanwhile, the Joker and Abner place a doll on a roller coaster full of people that don't realize it's a bomb. The Joker's killing spree at this fair is far from over. They look up and see Batman flying towards them. They launch another doll bomb at the glider, but Batman and Robin jump before it's too late. Can you see it, Joker? Feels to me like it's written all over my face. I've lain awake nights planning it, picturing it. Endless nights, considering every possible method, treasuring each imaginary moment. From the beginning, I knew that there's nothing wrong with you that I can't fix with my hands. Batman's rage with the Joker has finally reached a boiling point. There will be no more games and no more mercy. The Joker dies tonight. End of story. The Joker detonates a smoke bomb to cause panic. Thinking that this is still some kind of sick game, the Joker grabs a hostage and holds her at gunpoint, not realizing that Batman's patience has finally run out. No, Joker. You're playing the wrong game. The old game. Tonight you're taking no hostages. Tonight I'm taking no prisoners. I don't like calling them batarangs because that feels very cheesy, but you remember those really sharp, bat-shaped discs that are essentially like throwing stars that Batman uses? Well, as the Joker's trying to playfully take a hostage, a bunch of those fly at him from the smoke. One of them gouges one of his eyes out. The Joker runs, firing shots blindly behind him. For once in their entire cat and mouse relationship that they've had, the Joker is terrified. This isn't the Batman that he remembers. Meanwhile, Carrie and Abner are on the roller coaster that has the bomb on it. She manages to avoid Abner's gunfire while also trying to think of a way to get the bomb as far away as possible. And the Joker runs into the House of Mirrors with Batman close behind. He makes the mistake of taking a small child hostage, and suddenly in this House of Mirrors, Batman's face appears all around him. Joker, put the boy down. You've still got one eye left. Batman crashes through the mirror behind the Joker, but he's too slow. The Joker fires a shot that glances off one of Batman's ribs and takes a huge chunk of him with it. In his age, Batman's getting dizzy already, but the Joker is running out of bullets, thankfully. The Joker flees, taken aback by Batman's methods. It's like he's fighting someone completely different, someone far more dangerous. Abner runs out of bullets, and Robin fires her slingshot in retaliation. She manages to knock the bomb off of the roller coaster before it detonates, but Abner starts slowly advancing towards her. The Joker runs towards the Tunnel of Love, murdering people at random while he does. Batman gets to the tunnel's entrance, where the bodies of a couple are floating dead in the water. He curses himself for being too old and slow to stop this, and then he makes a vow. Those two are the last ones. Joker's last two victims, ever. No more. He puts his hand to his side. His suit is soaked completely through with blood. He is currently fighting to remain conscious, so whatever he's going to do, he has to do it quick. One thing I haven't mentioned that's a really powerful narrative device through this whole scene is that they've been cutting between what I've described and the ongoing debate about Batman on TV, specifically with Lana Lang, who you might remember as being his strongest supporter. And one of the points that she brings up at this exact moment as he makes that vow is that one of the reasons that she does support Batman is that he's never killed anybody. He's a hero because he refuses to kill. And as we see, as the people viewing this story from above, we see that he is finally ready to break that one rule and lose that small sliver of humanity that he's held on to. Abner grabs Carrie by the throat and begins to strangle her. As she fights to stay awake, the roller coaster suddenly takes a sharp turn, knocking him completely off of the roller coaster. He falls onto one of the rails below and is decapitated by one of the metal beams. Robin looks on in horror with tears streaming down her face, understandably traumatized from the events of today. Meanwhile, the Joker is now on a boat riding through the tunnel of love. It's kind of poetic, I think, in my mind, that Batman and the Joker's story would end in the tunnel of love. I don't know. There's something about that, because their relationship, even though it's like one based on hate, it's a very bad relationship, but it's such a strong relationship, and they're so connected as characters that it feels fitting that their story would come to an end here in this tunnel. With a mighty heave, Batman gets underneath the boat that the Joker's on and capsizes it with his strength. Batman knocks the gun out of Joker's hand, who simply pulls out a knife and continues attacking. He stabs Batman in the stomach with his knife. Blinded by pain and rage, Batman grabs his head with immense strength. Meanwhile, the Joker is repeatedly taking his knife out and stabbing Batman over and over again. He gives a violent twist, and with a crack, the Joker stops moving and crumples to the ground. A couple of witnesses scream, voices call Batman a killer, but as they leave, the Joker speaks up. They're gone? The witnesses, I mean. I'm really very disappointed with you, my sweet. The moment was perfect, and you didn't have the nerve. Paralysis? Really? Just an ounce or two more of pressure, and... Do I hear sirens? Yes, coming close. You won't get far. But then it doesn't matter if you do. They'll kill you for this. And they'll never know that you didn't have the nerve.
See you in hell.
With a devil's strength, he twists and twists. What's left of his spine goes. Whatever's in him rustles as it leaves. The Joker breaks his own neck, laughing while he does. He may be dead, but he's won. The police will believe that Batman killed him, and that's all that they'll need to officially sign his death warrant. Batman slumps against the wall, blood pouring out of all of his wounds and into the water. The sirens echo through the tunnel. Tires screech. The world is growing dark and cold. And this concludes issue 3 of The Dark Knight Returns, Hunt the Dark Knight. This is a very important moment in Batman's story. His list of allies is dwindling, and his luck is running out. The police will be gunning for him more than ever now, and he may not have the luck to stop them. Tensions between the US and the Soviets are higher than ever, and it seems like nuclear escalation is all but inevitable. And Superman's personal resentment towards Batman is deepening. When the president inevitably orders him to bring Batman in, it'll probably get messy. And all of this will come to a head in the 4th and final issue of the series, The Dark Knight Falls. And if you've stuck around this long, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. It means the world that you are still here watching the series and continuing to enjoy it and hopefully enjoy my content. And of course, huge thank you to the patrons, RD, Sean, and a special thank you to Snowy, one of my top tier patrons. Thank you so much. It means the world that you would support the content and support the journey going forward. If you haven't seen the video from last week, I kind of talk about the direction that I want this channel to go, the goals I have. I also put in a little brief explanation at the beginning of this video, but if you want to see it in more detail or hear it in more detail, I would check out the video from last week. and we're nearly at 400 subscribers. Thank you all so much. Every new subscriber I get, really appreciate it. It means the world. Thank you all so much for believing in my content and enjoying it for this long, and I hope you enjoy it going forward. But with that, like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you enjoy all of the videos that you see, visit the links in the description if you want to support me in other ways as well, and I will see you next week for the conclusion of this series, The Dark Knight Falls. I hope you're excited for that because I know that I am. And cut.